Okay, I'm going to try to run through how I figured this out, or how I would do it. This is that first picture you gave me, and when you measure that angle of these two lines, it's 158. So your miter, or your cut here, is going to be half of that. Each side is going to be identical. So these are 80 degrees, which means really, if you had a miter saw, you'd be cutting those at about 21 degrees. 90 minus 79. But you don't have a miter saw, so you're going to use any kind of a square object you have. And there's your 3-inch log here. And that's what you're looking to create, is that piece there, the hatched piece. And that's going to be the same on both of them. Those are identical pieces, just turned upside down. So you just got to imagine that in your mind. But since you don't have a miter box, because if you did, you would just put this on the miter box, you would turn the miter to 20 degrees, and you would cut it off, and you wouldn't, just let whatever fall off. Or if you had a protractor, you can put a protractor on here and mark that at 79 degrees and come up and cut it that way. But otherwise, if you do it with just a square object, that blue line represents just the end of a square log, and you just measure back from the end of a square cut log 9/16 of an inch and mark it across there. And the same thing will go for that one. Same thing, 9/16 back from the end of a square cut log. So if you recut these off square, and then you measure back 9/16, you cut that off, measure back 9/16, cut that off. Those should come together pretty good. And up here, similar thing, except that angle up there, the other one was 158, and this one is only 109. So half of 109.85 is going to be about 54.9 degrees, 55 degrees, which means if you were cutting this with a miter box, it'd be 90 minus 55, so about 35 degrees would be that cutoff. But you don't have a miter box, so you're just going to use the end of a square cut like that one there, and you're going to measure back for this top piece here. You're going to measure back, see, that's the 35. If you had a miter box, you'd be cutting at 35 degrees, or if you had a protractor, you'd be putting a protractor here and marking it at 55 degrees. But you don't, so you want to measure back from the end of a square cut log 2 1/8, according to what I've diagrammed here, 2 1/8 degrees, or 2 1/8 inches, and cut that off. And the same thing, you would measure back here 2 1/8 inches down here and cut that off, and end up with a mated piece. Now when you do this, because this isn't going to be exact, when you do this, if you have a gap at the outer end, if say this gap here is a 1/2 inch, you will cut half of the distance, 1/4 of an inch at this end, and nothing off of this end. So you would just take half of that gap off each end. And similarly, if it works out like this, and say this was a whole inch wide, then you would take a 1/2 of an inch of thickness here and 0 here. And the same thing on that upper one with a mated piece. So that's about all I can say with that. There are little 2-foot level things that open up and measure these kind of angles. And you just lay it on the ground, and there's a good 2-foot length here and a 2-foot length here, and they measure that angle. And then if you measured that and it was 115 or whatever, then you would know, you turn that other arm back to half of 115 to be 67.5, and you would mark it. So that might be a decent investment, and they're probably pretty cheap. But that's that for now. Talk to you soon. So as a matter of fact, if you have $25 for now and you keep this from being broken, I will buy it from you when I come up. I would just put it in the cart and buy it right now, but they want $1.40 just to put it in a cart for me and have you come pick it up. So I would go over there and pick one of these up. Presumably this thing opens all the way wide, and when it opens it should read 109 here, which means you will just put this on the edge of your piece of lumber and you'll close this to half of whatever that number is. If it's 109, you're going to close it to 54 and a half and make your line on your wood. That's what I would do.